We got JW.
You sound so excited that I'm here.
JW Townsen, officer. Is it officer?
To you?
No, what do you say? Do you say corporal?
Officer.
I don't know.
Officer.
I'm not a military man, as you can tell.
JW. It's fine.
Just JW.
Yeah.
California Highway Patrol in here. We always like to do Ask JW Anything. If there's any questions, you can call or text in, and he'll answer them to the best of your ability, or his ability.
Or 805, whatever it is.
805-543-3693 are the numbers to chime in.
I totally forgot that you were coming in today. Oh. There was something that hit me last week while I was driving that I had a question for you about. And it slips my mind right now. But I'm going to go back to something that I've talked about in the past, because I've noticed it doesn't seem to be changing. And that is people texting and driving.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it is an epidemic. Let's call it.
It's an epidemic.
I would call it. Distracted driving in general.
Is there any moves?
Yeah, there was a guy on the news. You see that truck that hit the Caltrans worker? Mm-hmm. Truck? I don't think they hit a worker. They hit
just a truck. Hit the big attenuator.
Yeah,
truck.
And they were distracted driving. I don't know what the details were of that. I see people now doing Instagram stories. You know what that is, right? I know you're not a big Instagrammer, but that's where you take little videos and you loop them all together, and they're driving down the road and they're doing this.
You do remember a few years ago, I think it was over in the Valley on I-5, that young lady that was, doing an Instagram live feed or whatever and crashed and killed her friends.
She was going super fast.
Yeah. It happens. I think, and that's why I was coming in today to talk about, is the mileage to death rate. It hasn't been up in almost a decade, and it's up right now. It's up last year. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with distracted driving. I mean, yeah, we're going to have fatal collisions. It's going to happen, but I think, our DUIs are down, or they have been down, because of education and, Lyft and Uber and taxis, rideshare, all this stuff, people being smarter. We're taking care of each other better. But for some reason, our mileage to death rate is up. And I think in large part that's from distracted driving. I mean, it's almost second nature. Everybody has a cell phone, smartphones, and texting and driving, using social media and driving, messing with it, trying to get music or, whatever you want to do.
The Jeff and Jeremy in the Morning podcast, which is very easy if you just subscribe. If you just subscribe, it pops into your feed. Yeah. And then you just hit play.
Yeah, I know. No, I mean, the music thing, I've even been, caught into, like, where it's on everything's on your phone now, and it's Bluetooth in, but then for some reason the Bluetooth in your phone stopped working, so you reach down, and, it just takes a second, and you can rear end somebody, or you can hit somebody, and it's amazing how fast it happened. I have a friend who was doing the same thing, couldn't get music to play, reached down to grab her phone to change it. She was in San Francisco, a little bit different situation, ended up rear-ending a truck. Thank goodness it was, didn't do any damage to her, his car or his truck, but her car had to be fixed.
But even around here, I mean, this weekend, if you were cruising around Saturday with it getting warmer, schools were starting to get out. We had the Pismo car show. We had other things going on. Traffic was a mess around here, and we had crashes, one after another.
Okay, so what is the penalty for distracted driving?
Well, it's an infraction if you're just caught.
Okay,
driving. So let's say you get a cell phone ticket or a texting and driving ticket. It's just an infraction, like a speeding ticket. It's the same thing. Actually, I don't like a speeding ticket because it doesn't go against your insurance. It's like a seatbelt ticket.
It's like a seatbelt ticket.
Yes, and the fine increases as you get more. Where it's different is if you cause an accident and you hurt somebody, let alone if it's a fatal. There is case law that is that has shown that the courts are going to throw the book at you. They're going to file felony charges against you because it wasn't just an accident.
So there's no sympathy from the legal perspective.
No.
When it comes to the state of California.
And I think that's what they don't look at it the same as DUIs. Okay. And it isn't until that happens. Once that happens, once you injure somebody or you kill somebody as a result of the crash that you caused, then the courts are going to file felony charges against you. It's no different than a felony DUI crash. Wow. Right? I mean, you may get less time, maybe, but it's a felony. You're still getting charged with the felony. You're still going to court being prosecuted for a felony because you've injured or killed somebody as a result of your errors. So how important
is that text message? How important is that Instagram story? How important is that photo you have to take of the sun setting? Probably not that important.
And what you have to remember is that whenever we are driving, it's not just our safety. It's that family that you're, It's like today, like this weekend, that Caltrans worker. Yeah, that attenuator truck is out there for a reason. You hit that. But what if you hit that worker that's out there, mowing the grass or trying to, I think they were mowing the weeds so that people can see north and south. You can see traffic. There was a crash that happened, moments before that where, it appears a young lady could have lane changed a motorcycle. He went down, broke his shoulder. Things happen, and they happen fast when you're driving. So we got to make sure that we're, A, paying attention, but B, not texting and on the cell phone and social media and things of that nature while we're driving, because things happen very fast.
We got a couple of good questions coming in on the 805 text line. Ask JW anything. JW's here from the California Highway Patrol. We got one about animals here in a second. Also, Lawn Boy Kevin wants to know if you think the Beatles should have beat Queen.
Well, if we're talking about all-time great rock bands, then yes.
I think so too.
I think Queen is amazing. I think their music is great, but you're talking about all time. The bad thing is that the Beatles were so long ago that so many listeners don't really listen to them anymore.
Well, and this is Queen's year. I mean, because of the movie, because of this resurgence of everything that they are, in our conscience. That I think that's why they did as well as they did. To be honest with you, you had this contest 4 years ago. Beatles wiped the floor with Queen.
Let me ask you a question. Was Elton John in this contest?
He was not, which will be interesting to see.
We play 2 songs from Elton John, and I think we play about 2 songs from the Beatles.
I mean, is Elton John a rock? I mean, is he rocking? I guess. Great musician. I mean, it's amazing.
All right for fighting. I love that.
I mean, it's amazing. But
Crocodile Rock's a great song.
What do we play? Benny and the Jets and Rocket Man? I think those are the 2.
Great songs.
So anyways, 805-543-3693. You can call in with your question, or you can text it in. Mike wanted to jump on that conversation we were having about texting and driving.
All right,
because you were saying the new stat numbers that just came out as far as miles per deaths in this country the
mileage to death rate is up for the first time in close to a decade. So we're trying to figure out.
And DUIs are down, right? Overall?
For the most part, yes. I can only speak for I didn't look at the DUI stats for the state. Our areas are for our county they're down significantly from 10 years ago, which is a great thing. Because it doesn't mean that we're not out there looking. Other agencies aren't looking. It's just that we, as a society, as a community, we're being smarter. That's great.
All right, Ron, hold on a second. We'll get to yours in just a second. First, Mike, what did you want to say about this?
Well, I just think because it is such a big problem, the only way they're going to get a handle on it is to make it a felony. First time, just a felony offense. People will stop doing it.
Well, I mean,
how long did it take?
That's not going to happen.
Drinking and driving to get to that point.
Well, drinking and driving is still a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
Your first 3 offenses are a misdemeanor.
But if you hurt somebody, if you hurt somebody, then it can be vehicle.
Way more people are texting and talking on the phone than drinking and driving.
I remember Uncle Rocky. Okay, Uncle Rocky used to take his drink to go, put it in the cup holder of the Lincoln Continental, and have his highball while driving down the road with some straws. And if he got pulled over, we're talking about the 60s and the 70s. Okay. If he got pulled over, then, they were like, hey, let me follow you home. Make sure you get home safe. It was not frowned upon like it is now. When does texting and driving or distracted driving get to that point? Or do we have to wait 30, 40 years like we did? I mean, because it seems like drunk driving became a big deal in, I would say, the 80s. That's when people really started taking note and saying, okay, this is a real epidemic problem. Mm-hmm. You yourself said earlier that texting and driving is reaching epidemic levels.
Yeah, distracted driving is, in general. Texting, using your cell phone, things like that.
Yeah.
But we also live in a state where they just made, it only a misdemeanor to possess heroin, certain amounts of it, meth, other drugs. So how can somebody say, your first offense of getting a texting and driving ticket's a felony whenever you can have heroin, a certain amount of.
But if you're all juiced on smack, it's okay.
Yeah. So we just I think the best way to do it is through education and us taking care of each other. I mean, laws are laws, and yes, there are some important laws, and there are things that we have to, as an agency, get out there and not regulate, but enforce.
All right, go ahead.
And distracting driving is one of those. It's just very important because
what's the typical? And I know you guys, it's case by case basis, but I mean, what's the typical distracted driving fine when it comes to fruition for somebody to pay if they're texting and driving down the road?
I don't know the bottom dollar because the county adds on, the cities add on, but it's not cheap.
Okay.
You know, a seatbelt ticket used to be like $55 20 years ago. Now it's, $150. So cell phone ticket's probably a couple $100. Doesn't go against your driving record. They could change that, make it a moving violation. I think that would hurt. I think that would be something that we could definitely, look to happen.
That would make your insurance go up and all those things.
Because it technically, possibly should be a moving violation because you are driving, you are, usually weaving or you're not paying attention, you're going on the shoulder, you're hitting things. So I don't see realistically them passing a law saying, okay, your first time is a felony because there's other things that are as dangerous or worse.
But know that if you hurt somebody,
that are misdemeanors, yes.
But if you hurt somebody, you got to remember that if you hurt somebody, that's a different conversation.
Exactly.
So you don't know how, if you are going to get an accident from distracted driving, how it's going to happen.
Exactly.
You're going to run off the road and go into somebody's fence or, just go into a ditch, or you're going to end up going head on into somebody or hitting somebody that's walking on the side of the road.
Yeah, you hate to say things, but it's like playing Russian roulette, really. I mean, it really is texting and driving. I mean, because you don't know.
805 Beer text lines is 805-543-3693.
Ron in AG wanted to know about pets in the lap, and he says, why is it not distracted driving when people have their dogs in their laps?
It can be. If you see a reason to pull them over, so let's say they're driving bad and you pull up next to them and they got their dog in the lap, then you can ride them because the safe speed would be 0 for that because they're getting in the way of them driving safely. Just having a little dog on their lap, it'd be hard to prove in the court. Okay, was that dangerous? I mean, can it be? Yes, but so can eating or having a drink. It's the same thing. So you have to be able to substantiate it or prove it in court.
Now there's been studies that say that the most dangerous form of distracted driving is having kids in the car.
Yeah, exactly, but. The government's not going to say, okay, you can't have no more children.
Kids have to stay at home.
So yeah,
they can't be in cars.
Driving in, we all get used to it. We all do it. Those of us who have licenses, and it becomes second nature. We just have to remember that it is dangerous, or it has the ability, it can be dangerous, and we have to make sure we're taking precautions.
Very nice.
Somebody's calling.
Yeah, you wanted, oh, okay. You say, normally Jeff would screen it. 805-543-3693. Those are the numbers to get through right now. How often do you give tickets for tinted windows? We've had this before. The law in California is in the front driver and passenger window, 0-10, right?
0.
Yeah.
Here's my personal, opinion on that. And what I do is if I see somebody's windows that are dark, and I pull them over specifically for that reason, or if I'm on a stop and I see it, I get their ID. And if I can't see their ID on the other side of that in broad daylight, then they're probably going to get a ticket for tint because that's way too dark. I can understand some tint doesn't make it right, just like, technically going over 65 is against the law, right? It's an infraction. So that's how I feel about tinted windows. Now, there are people that do this job that don't feel that way, and that's their opinion.
It sucks to spend a couple $100 getting your windows tinted, losing your car for an afternoon, and then getting pulled over and you have to rip it right off because you got a ticket for it.
It does suck for it, but you should also know that when you get that done, you're taking that chance.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was getting at.
Same thing when people get their tinted, they get their, they get aftermarket rear taillights, or they put blue light bulbs or red light bulbs in their headlamps. They're spending money for that, but they know that there's a possibility they could get pulled over for
on the tint front, asking for a friend. What if you bought the car that way?
Doesn't matter.
It's your responsibility.
I love that. Well, I bought it that way. These aren't my drugs.
And it happens.
These aren't even my pants.
And that's what it does, is that people get mad. Okay, I got pulled over, for a CS reason, because it was, and I got arrested. Well, if your windows weren't tinted, or you had a front license plate, or your tab was right, or your rear taillights were working, you wouldn't have got pulled over, probably.
Distracted driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many times have you pulled somebody over for something minor, or like their car tabs weren't up to date, and then they were either drunk or you had to arrest them for drugs or whatever? Yeah,
it happens all the time.
Yeah,
but it's funny. I'm not trying to stereotype, but for the most part, people who don't keep their vehicles up to date, or usually a lot of times they do have warrants, or they don't have a driver's license, and you're not.
They don't have distracted driving problems. They have distracted life problems.
Yes.
I would think that's funny, just watching the live PD shows and all that good stuff.
To people all the time. They're they're in whether it's in San Louis or in town. I got pulled over at 1:00 on Friday morning for my right rear taillight was out. Okay. Well, is that wrong? No, it's not. It's wrong on you. You should have had the taillight fixed.
And probably not been out at Friday morning from 1 o'clock in the morning.
Subscribe to the Jeff and Jeremy podcast now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and YouTube. It's your Central Coast commute-friendly podcast.